שלום רב לכולכם, זה גם תענוג וגם כבוד בשבילי לדבר איתכם על מימד שלא דיברנו עליו הרבה עד עכשיו הבוקר, וזה המימד החברתי. ברשותכם אעבור לאנגלית. Wherever you look across the world, social issues are spreading instead of shrinking. And this is despite a huge effort that has been made by governments to deal directly with those whom our system leaves behind. And when you look at Brexit, and when you look at the election of Donald Trump, you understand that there is a huge part of the population which is being left behind. Some can be helped by measures such as those we've heard today. But those who are born into families with different sets of values, maybe with a drug habit, maybe with long-standing unemployment, are stuck behind. My generation believed in equality of opportunity, but we understand now that it's just an empty phrase. If you're born into the wrong family, equality of opportunity does not exist for you. And so the lack of equality in our society increases, and we see violence as a result. We see violence across many countries, protests across many countries, where people are left behind because the system leaves them behind. And I want to open a perspective today which is, in my view, revolutionary. And it's the perspective of impact investment and the influence of impact investment on the flows of capital within our system. It's difficult to change our system through legislation. If you want to change capitalism, you have to change it from within through flows of capital. What do I mean by that? 17 years ago, I was asked by the British government to look at the issue of poverty. And I understood then for the first time that our system had worked very well to provide capital for those who want to innovate and make money. But it does not provide capital to those who want to innovate and help others. And throughout the world, you have what I like to call a social sector of not-for-profit organizations or profit-with-purpose organizations, which have two characteristics in common. One, they don't have any money, and two, very few have scale. And so 17 years ago, we published a report saying, how is it that we have not been able to innovate in connecting those who want to have a social purpose to the capital markets? It ought to be possible. And with my career as a venture capitalist and private equity investor in mind, I began to work with colleagues to try to devise ways of doing just that, connecting social entrepreneurs and social organizations to the capital markets. In 2010, we got a big breakthrough. Two young people in the team of social finance in the UK, which was founded 3 years before, a team which then counted about 18 people, came to me and said, we were in Birmingham in the UK talking to somebody about prisoners who reoffend. And the idea came to us to connect the reduction in the number of prisoners who go back to prison with a return on investment. And we created the social impact bond. A social impact bond, how many of you know about social impact bonds? Any of you? Quite a few of you. A social impact bond is a way of raising capital for a not-for-profit. Not giving it a grant, but raising investment capital. And you can raise several $1 million. The biggest social impact bond in the world is in the United States today, dealing with teenage pregnancies. It's a $30 million social impact bond. There are 2 social impact bonds here in Israel. One exists already for dropout rates in computer studies from the University of Haifa and the Mikhlala of Tel Aviv. And the second one is about to appear for the prevention of type 2 diabetes, which is going to be a $6 million social impact bond, helping 400,000 or a share of 400,000 people in Israel who are pre-diabetic. There are 64 social impact bonds across the world. They tie a return on investment, which can go from 0 to 15% or more, to an improvement in the sorts of social issues that I have been mentioning, including homelessness, improvements in education, improvements in employment, and every social issue, basically. I think there are 64 social impact bonds across, I think, 14 countries or so today, and they're covering about a dozen social issues. Now, what did the social impact bond portend? The social impact bond presented a new dimension. All of a sudden, what we had assumed to be the case, which is that we cannot measure anything in the social area, began to lead to concepts of you may not be able to measure the improvement in the quality of life of a prisoner, but you can certainly measure the number of prisoners who go back to jail after their release and compare it with previous years. And you can pay for that improvement. And when we began to explore how we can get impact investment going, the government in the UK, in the United States, and in many other countries began to understand that this issue of measurement is crucial to them also. Governments have been used to spending money, and they have insufficient money to deal with social issues, to spend money without measuring very much. All of a sudden, you began to get a concept like pay for success, where contracts are given by government, not just to go and visit a prisoner, say, but to be remunerated on the number of prisoners who end up in jobs instead of back in jail. And we began to understand that an ecosystem needs to be created in each country and is being created in Israel today, just as Rivka Karmi talked of an ecosystem here for Beersheba, of an ecosystem to support this type of social entrepreneurship. In the UK, in 2013, the government allowed us to take £600 million to create a social investment bank called Big Society Capital. £400 million came from bank accounts which had been separated from their owners. 200 million came from banks. Big Society Capital has funded 40 investment organizations seeking to achieve measurable social improvement in areas like assisted housing, which were very relevant to us here in Israel, as well as the other areas that I have been talked about. The government has introduced taxation incentives. If you invest in a social impact bond, you can deduct your investment from your income. It has provided grants for social sector organizations to prepare themselves to receive investment capital. And here in Israel, we're working with the Apotropos Haklali and the Ministry of Justice to do the same thing, to create an engine through a fund similar in spirit to Big Society Capital, to fund those social entrepreneurs who want to get involved in investment activity and to back others, just as we did with the Yozma scheme and business entrepreneurship here in Israel. But there is a dimension that is even more important than the specific tool of impact investment, which developed from our work in the G8 Global Task Force on Impact Investment. And that task force brought 200 people from across the world to think about the issues that I have been addressing. And we came to a very important conclusion, which is that the world has changed. The world has changed from, in the 19th century, measuring financial return, and in the 20th century, measuring risk and return. The world has changed already in the 21st century to measuring risk, return, and impact. It's just that people have not yet realized it. $50 trillion have signed up to the United Nations Principles of Responsible Investment. $50 trillion of investment money says we have to achieve more than just a financial return. We have a millennial generation in search of meaning that refuses just to get into the capitalist system and to make as much money as possible. And we have governments that need entrepreneurship and need innovation in the social area and need capital if they are to improve the fabric of our society. The fabric of our society is being threatened by the spread of these social issues. If you can prevent a kid from dropping out of school or dropping out of university and getting a diploma or a degree, you change that kid's life. If you can prevent a pre-diabetic from becoming diabetic, you change that person's life. You also create great savings for the government, and you create a great economic driver, bringing talent and effort and human resources back into the economy. I believe that over the next 2 or 3 decades, we are going to see a fundamental change in capital flows in our society because of this idea. We are already finding investors who are saying, I need to address those 3 dimensions. I don't want to make investments that have no positive, measurable social impact. But more generally, we're beginning to see big companies address the issues that concern us, issues of the quality of their supply chain, of the working conditions within it, of their impact on the environment, of their impact on society. And we're beginning to see big investment institutions like BlackRock and Goldman Sachs launch funds which invest in those types of companies which are doing a better job at these types of more qualitative improvements. Over time, I believe that impact investment, which sits a bit like venture capital, between socially responsible investment, which I would call investment with impact, where very little is measured, but it creates some positive impact, and philanthropy, which is beginning to realize that its business model is being disrupted. Philanthropy, which instead of just giving money away, can begin to use its capital to make investments in charitable organizations led by serious, ambitious entrepreneurs, often young people, that want to improve the lives of others. And so this revolution is going to come about because these 3 dimensions are going to change the capital flows. Increasing amounts of money are going to go to achieving positive impact. Now, here in Israel, where I have been privileged to be very involved in the development of the venture capital industry and of entrepreneurship, the first Apex Fund was set up in 1993. I believe that there is a major opportunity for us to become leaders in this field of social entrepreneurship and investment. We have proved what we can do in terms of business entrepreneurship. We know that there is a huge social consciousness in Israel and that many people are concerned about the lives of others. And we have a government that is becoming supportive of these efforts. We find the finance ministry supportive now of social impact bonds and the development of a big society capital-like fund. The Ministry of Justice is also being supportive, and I think if you bring those elements together in the same way that we were able to develop high-tech and venture capital, we will be able to develop here in Israel a powerful force for improving the lives of those who are left behind. I think we can add to the title of Startup Nation the title of Impact Nation. Thank you very much.